The silent edge at the farthest corner of the galaxy, where the maps of the great empires ended, there was a stretch of dark space. Few ships ever dared to cross it, and those who tried often never returned. The place was known only in whispers, in stories told by traders, soldiers, and travelers. They called it the Silent Edge. No one knew what lived there, or if anything lived there at all, but rumors spread like fire in every port, and the name always carried a shadow of fear. Civilizations that had ruled for thousands of years avoided the region. Their star charts marked it as empty, yet none trusted the emptiness. There were reports of strange signals, of warships that had gone in and never come out, of voices that carried through the void like ghosts. Some dismissed it as lies. Others believed there was something waiting, something dangerous. And when those whispers grew louder, they always carried the same word: humans. The galaxy had long forgotten where humanity had first risen. Their homeworld was hidden, their true strength unknown. Most civilizations thought of them as a fading species, scattered and weak. But there were also those who warned that humanity was never weak. They had vanished to the far edges of the stars not because they were afraid, but because they were building something in silence, something the galaxy was not ready to face. It was into this darkness that the fleet of the Drexian Empire now traveled. Their ships were mighty, their weapons unmatched, their banners carried with pride across half the known stars. The Drexians had conquered worlds, enslaved species, and broken empires. They believed themselves unstoppable. And so, when rumors reached their leaders about a hidden human presence beyond the frontier, they laughed. Humans, to them, were little more than pests scattered across the galaxy. The idea that these scattered remnants could hold secrets powerful enough to burn civilizations was amusing. Still, arrogance always demands proof. The Drexian High Command ordered a fleet to move to the frontier and investigate. If humanity truly hid there, the Empire would crush them and take whatever technology they possessed. It would be a simple show of power, another conquest to add to their endless list. The fleet that set out was vast. Hundreds of warships stretched across the void, their silver hulls shining under distant stars. Carriers, battleships, frigates, and escorts, all moved as one iron tide. They believed nothing could stand against them. Their commanders spoke with certainty. They would find these humans, and the silent edge would finally be cleared of mystery. But as they crossed the border, a strange silence fell. The galaxy behind them felt distant like a memory, and ahead there was only darkness. No stars burned close. No signals reached their sensors. The void seemed thicker, heavier, as though it resisted their presence. Crews grew restless. Even seasoned officers whispered that the air inside the ships felt colder. Days passed. The fleet pressed deeper. No enemy appeared. No signs of human life were found. Only the silence of dead systems and the slow drift of broken asteroids. The Drexian commanders mocked the fear of their crews, calling it weakness. They insisted that the humans were nothing but shadows, hiding because they were too weak to face real power. Yet the silence was not empty. Strange signals began to reach their ships, faint broken transmissions that sounded like whispers. Sometimes they came from the left, sometimes the right, but never from a clear source. They were words in no alien tongue the Drexians knew, yet there was meaning in them, a weight that made every listener uneasy. The technicians tried to explain them as echoes or glitches, but the whispers kept coming. And when they did, the crews could not sleep. One night cycle, as the fleet drifted near a cluster of silent stars, a sensor officer shouted in alarm. For a moment, just a moment, he had seen something vast in the distance, a shadow moving through the void. But when the commanders checked the screens, there was nothing. Only black space, endless and still. The officer was punished for spreading fear, but whispers began to spread among the crews. They said they were being watched, and then came the first true sign. A single beacon, old and rusted, floated ahead of the fleet. It was human in design. The Drexians laughed when they saw it, for the beacon was ancient and weak. But when they tried to scan it, their systems failed. When they tried to destroy it, their weapons froze. The beacon kept drifting untouched, and from it came a voice. Calm, steady, human. You have crossed the line. Turn back. The voice echoed through every ship at once, bypassing shields, ignoring codes, speaking directly into their halls. For the first time, the Drexian commanders fell silent. The crews looked to their leaders for answers, but none came. The fleet pressed forward anyway, their arrogance stronger than their fear. But in that moment, every man and woman aboard knew the truth. They were not alone. The silent edge was not empty. Something waited there, and it was watching. Something human. Whispers of power, the Drexian fleet moved deeper into the silent edge, their confidence still unshaken. To them, one old beacon and one strange voice were not enough to turn back. They believed themselves to be the rulers of the stars, masters of fleets that had broken countless empires. Yet as they pressed further, unease began to grow inside their steel walls. It started with the whispers. At first, only a few crew members reported them. Strange voices drifting through the communication channels, soft, almost like echoes. The technicians ran checks, but no faults were found. The commanders dismissed it as static. But the whispers did not stop. They grew clearer. Sometimes they spoke in languages long dead, sometimes in voices that sounded too human, and always they carried a weight that sank deep into the listeners' minds. Turn back. You do not belong here. The dust remembers. No one knew what the words meant, but no one forgot them either. Crews who had once laughed at the idea of human strength now avoided speaking of them at all. The name human became something heavy, like a curse. The Drexian admiral, a tall and ruthless figure named Vorash, refused to believe in fear. He ordered the fleet to ignore the whispers. He told his soldiers that humanity was a dying race, clinging to shadows because they had nothing else left. His speeches were filled with pride, but his eyes betrayed doubt. Every time the whispers came, even Vorash would fall silent for a moment longer than before. And then came the second sign. One of the escort ships, a fast scout that had flown ahead of the fleet, suddenly vanished from all scanners. No explosion, no distress signal. It simply disappeared. Minutes later, a broken transmission reached the fleet. A voice, trembling and distorted. They are here. Watching. Too close. The signal ended. Nothing more was heard. The fleet slowed. For the first time, the Drexians felt something they had never known in all their conquests. Hesitation. They had fought enemies with larger fleets, stronger weapons, and strange powers, but never had they fought an enemy that remained unseen. An enemy that attacked not with fire but with silence. That silence broke when one ship appeared. It was not large, not compared to the might of the Drexian armada. Its hull was dark, scarred with battles long past. It moved slowly, almost as if it carried no weight at all. The human ship drifted across their path, cutting the fleet in two. Its presence was simple, but it demanded attention. Every scanner focused on it, every eye turned toward it. Admiral Vorash laughed. One ship, he said. This is the mighty power we were warned of. A relic barely standing? But even as he mocked, he could not ignore the detail. The ship looked old, yes, but its scars glowed faintly, as if the damage itself had been reshaped into something alive. The hull seemed to bend the light around it. The more the fleet scanned, the less they understood. A message came, not through radio, not through code. It came as a voice inside every Drexian mind, calm and sharp. You are trespassing. Leave or you will not return. The crews froze. Officers shouted in confusion. Some fell to the floor, clutching their heads. The message was not just sound, it was presence. A presence that pressed down on every mind like a storm. Vorash, furious, ordered his fleet to prepare weapons. Show them our power. Burn them from the stars, he roared. Cannons powered up. Energy pulsed through the great Drexian ships. Missiles readied, shields rose, engines surged. The entire armada pointed its strength at the single ship. The human ship did nothing. For a long, heavy moment, it simply waited. And then without firing, without moving, it sent another message, do not test us, and then it was gone. 1 second it filled their screens. The next empty space. No trace, no trail, no signal. A ghost, the Drexians shouted in rage and confusion. Some claimed it had cloaked. Others said it had never been there at all. But deep inside, every soldier knew what it meant. Humanity had allowed them to see, and then it had vanished by choice. In the silence that followed, the whispers returned. Not faint this time, but clear. They spoke in unison, countless voices woven into one. You walk where you should not. The edge remembers. Humanity remembers. Leave now or face what waits in the dark. The fleet drifted in silence. Crews gripped their stations with shaking hands. Even Vorash found no words. For the first time in their long history, the Drexians did not know if their power was enough. The first encounter, the Drexian fleet slowed, waiting in the dark. Every ship, every crew member, every eye fixed on the empty space where the human vessel had disappeared. The silence that followed was heavier than any battle they had fought before. For a moment it felt as though the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Then, without warning, the human ship reappeared. It did not arrive with a flash or the roar of engines. It was simply there, as if the void itself had bent to let it through. Its dark hull glowed faintly with patterns that none could understand. Old scars ran across its body, but those scars burned with light as if the damage had been reshaped into something alive. No one in the fleet could explain what they were seeing. The Drexian Admiral Vorash gave his command. Open fire. Hundreds of cannons turned. Missiles armed themselves. Engines flared. The Armada unleashed a storm of fire that could have destroyed a planet. Blinding beams crossed the void. Streaks of light shot forward and explosions filled the dark. The crew cheered in anger, certain that no ship could survive such force. But when the fire cleared, the human ship still stood. Not a single mark had been added to its hull. It had not even raised its shields. The attacks had bent away, scattered like dust in the wind. The Drexians fell silent. For the first time, the invincible conquerors of the galaxy felt doubt. Then the human ship moved. It did not charge or roar into battle. It glided forward with a calmness that was more terrifying than any fury. A single burst of light shot from its side and a Drexian battleship vanished. No explosion, no debris. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. The fleet screamed in disbelief. A second strike followed. Another ship disappeared, erased from the stars as if it had never existed. Panic spread. Crews scrambled to shields, to weapons, to engines, but nothing mattered. Every shot they fired broke apart before reaching the human vessel. Every defense failed before it was even raised. The Drexians were warriors trained never to retreat. But the silence of the enemy crushed their spirit. There was no anger in the human ship, no pride, no joy in battle, only stillness, as if it did not see them as enemies but as children playing with fire. Vorash roared at his officers. "Fight! Show them Drexian strength!" His voice echoed through the fleet, but even he could not hide the tremor in his tone. The human ship sent a message. This time it was not inside their minds. It came across every screen, every speaker, every channel at once. "Leave now. This is your only warning." The words were calm, steady, and final. The Drexians did not leave. Pride chained them to the battlefield. They rallied their ships, tightened their formations, and prepared for another strike. But the humans did not fire again. Instead, the ship vanished once more, dissolving into the dark. The fleet waited, weapons ready, eyes searching. Minutes passed. Hours even. The enemy did not return. Some began to think the humans had left, unwilling to fight. Others believed it was a trick, that the enemy was waiting for the right moment to strike again. Then the whispers returned. This time, they came not as faint echoes, but as a storm. Voices filled every ship, countless voices speaking as one. "You have been warned. Humanity does not seek war, but if you bring war, you will find only dust." The voices faded, leaving silence behind. The crews sat frozen at their stations. No one dared to speak. No one dared to breathe. In the great command ship, Vorash clenched his fists. His pride demanded that he fight, that he prove Drexian strength to the galaxy. Yet deep inside, even he knew the truth. This was not an enemy to test. This was something greater, something hidden for too long. The fleet stayed at the edge of the silent frontier, uncertain of their next move. But one truth was now clear to all. The galaxy had laughed at humanity, called them weak, forgotten them in the dark. But now, standing at the frontier, the Drexians knew the laughter was over. Humanity was waiting. And their secrets were not only real, they were deadly. The secret weapon, the Drexian fleet had faced countless enemies in their long history. They had fought starborn predators, machine empires, and species that wielded strange sciences. Yet none of those battles prepared them for the silence of the humans. The silence was not weakness. It was power, hidden in plain sight, waiting to strike. For hours, the Armada lingered at the edge of the void, searching for the human ship that had vanished. Crews scanned the dark with desperate hands. Officers barked orders, but nothing appeared. Space was empty still, endless. The more they searched, the more the weight of that emptiness grew. The Drexians, conquerors of countless systems, felt like children lost in the dark. And then, without warning, the ship returned. It did not come alone this time. One human vessel became 2, then 4, then 10. The void rippled with sudden light, and a formation of warships materialized around the Drexian fleet. They were not massive carriers or hulking dreadnoughts like those of the Empire. Instead, they were sharp, angular, and silent. Each carried scars that glowed faintly with strange energy. They did not move like machines. They moved like predators. Panic rippled through the Drexian ranks. "How long have they been here?" shouted one officer. None could answer. The humans had been watching them all along, unseen, untouchable. Admiral Varash clenched his fists. His pride refused to bend. "They hide behind tricks. Fire all weapons! Burn them from the void!" Cannons thundered again. Missiles streaked across the black. The Drexian armada poured its fury into the human line. But once again, nothing struck. The human ships shimmered with light, and every shot bent away as though space itself refused to touch them. Then the humans answered. It began with a single strike. One of the human ships released a beam of white light sharp as a blade. It did not explode against its target, it cut through. A Drexian cruiser split in two, drifting apart without fire, as if some unseen hand had sliced it open. Another human vessel launched something smaller. Missiles, yet not missiles. They curved and twisted as though alive, dodging shields, weaving through defenses, striking engines with pinpoint accuracy. When they hit, they did not explode. Instead, they folded space, pulling entire Drexian ships into holes that closed behind them. Those vessels did not return. Fear spread like fire. The Drexians had seen weapons before, but never like these. These were not tools of war. These were secrets of nature itself, reshaped by human hands. The galaxy's laws bent to their will. Borash roared for order. He called for tighter formations, for counterattacks, for courage. But his words could not break the silence of his soldiers. Every crewman knew the truth. The humans were not testing them. The humans were showing them a fraction of what they could do, and still the human ships did not destroy the fleet. They disabled. They erased. They struck with precision, but they did not unleash their full fury. It was not a battle. It was a warning. The whispers returned, flooding through the channels once more. "You are trespassing. Humanity does not seek war. But if war comes, you will find only ruin." The Drexians trembled. Some begged their admiral to retreat. Others sat frozen, unable to speak. Never before had they begged for mercy. Yet in that moment, the mightiest empire of the stars felt smaller than dust. Borash, desperate, launched his final weapon. Hidden in the heart of his flagship was a cannon powered by collapsing stars. It was the Empire's pride, a weapon capable of breaking entire fleets. He ordered it charged. Energy filled the great ship, shaking its walls. The crew prayed it would succeed. The weapon fired. A storm of light surged forward, tearing through the void. The blast was strong enough to erase anything in its path. For a heartbeat, the Drexians believed they had won. For a heartbeat, they thought the humans could be broken. But the storm never touched its target. The human flagship glowed with sudden light, and space itself folded around it. The blast vanished into nothing. Not even a ripple remained. Borash fell silent. His greatest weapon had been swallowed as though it never existed. His pride crumbled in that instant. And then the humans spoke again. "Do not test us again." The fleet knew then that humanity's secrets were far beyond their reach. Weapons that bent space, shields that defied energy, ships that vanished at will. It was power beyond imagination, hidden at the edge of the stars. The Drexians were not fighting an enemy. They were standing before a truth that should have never been found, and humanity had chosen to reveal only a glimpse. The lesson, the battlefield, was silent. Where once the Drexian fleet had stretched like a sea of stars, now only fragments drifted. Dozens of ships had been erased, pulled into nothing or cut apart with frightening precision. Fires burned on the broken hulls that still floated, and the survivors stared out into the void with wide, trembling eyes. And yet, the humans had not destroyed them all. That was the part that cut deepest. The Drexians were used to either victory or death. They knew how to conquer and how to be conquered. But this careful, deliberate sparing of survivors was something far worse. It was not mercy. It was a message. The human fleet remained silent and still, their dark hulls glowing faintly against the stars. Not a single gun fired now. Not a single move was made. They simply waited, surrounding the broken remains of the once proud armada like silent judges. On the Drexian flagship, Admiral Vorash sat in his command chair, his once booming voice gone quiet. He had led countless campaigns, crushed enemies, and built his empire's reputation with blood and fire. But now all that remained of his power was dust floating in the void. His officers no longer looked at him with trust. They looked at him with fear, not fear of his wrath, but fear of what stood before them. Then the human flagship spoke again. "Your empire has seen enough. Leave now. Tell the others what waits beyond the frontier." The voice was calm, steady, and final. It carried no anger, no triumph, no threat of vengeance. And that made it worse. The Drexians knew the humans could have destroyed them utterly, could have turned their fleet into ash without effort. But they had chosen not to. It was not weakness. It was confidence. The survivors began their retreat. Engines lit one by one, and the broken fleet turned back toward the stars they had once thought they ruled. No one cheered. No one sang of survival. They fled in silence, leaving behind the wreckage of their pride. As the Drexians withdrew, the human ships did not follow. They simply watched. Their glowing scars dimmed. Their sharp silhouettes vanished one by one into the void until only darkness remained once more. The silent edge returned to silence, but silence no longer meant emptiness. The Drexian crews carried the weight of what they had seen. Every survivor knew that their empire's greatest weapons had failed, that their pride had been shattered, that humanity had revealed only a fragment of their true power. And every survivor also knew the most terrifying truth of all. The humans had let them live because they wanted them to speak. The Drexian admiral returned home, his name cursed by his own people, but his story spread across the galaxy faster than fire. Traders whispered it in markets. Soldiers repeated it in barracks. Politicians argued over it in great halls. And in every telling, the same warning remained. At the edge of the galaxy, humanity waits. Empires that once mocked humanity now sat in uneasy silence. Some tried to deny the stories, claiming they were exaggerations. Others whispered that if even half of the tale was true, then no empire was safe. Civilizations that had stood for millennia began to glance nervously toward the dark, wondering if their time was almost over. For humanity did not seek war. They did not conquer, did not boast, did not reveal themselves fully. They stayed hidden, silent, and patient, and that was what made them terrifying, because patience is power, and secrets are weapons greater than any fleet. The galaxy had laughed at humanity, had dismissed them as weak, forgotten, scattered. But the silent edge had spoken. It had shown that humanity had not disappeared. They had been building, shaping, and waiting for the day the galaxy would come looking. And when that day came, humanity did not roar with anger. They did not demand submission. They only whispered a warning, leave. But everyone who heard that warning knew what it meant. If war ever came, if the galaxy ever pressed too far, then those whispers would become fire. And when that fire rose, entire civilizations would fall to dust. The Drexians had thought themselves untouchable. Now they lived with the memory of ships that vanished without a trace, of weapons that bent the laws of space, of voices that broke through every shield and code. They lived with the truth that humanity was no myth. Humanity was a storm hiding in silence. At the edge of the galaxy, the silence remained. But now the galaxy understood the truth. Silence was not peace. Silence was warning, and humanity was waiting.